After this many years, I thought I'd be over it. Here's some super serious input on something that's been weighing on me for years, and that's Batman Beyond's epilogue. The creators of Batman Beyond made Epilogue, but they seem to be confused about what Batman Beyond is, so we're just gonna go over it real quick. We're gonna go over it. In the pilot episode, Terry McGinnis is an average screw-up who picks up a fight with a gang and gets chased onto a country road that just happens to lead to Wayne Manor. Randomly, Terry almost hits Bruce Wayne. He crashes, Bruce scares off the gang, and nearly has a heart attack, so Terry happens to get into Wayne Manor so that he can help him. Bruce happens to fall asleep. Terry happens to notice a bat that happens to get trapped in the grandfather clock, and he happens to find the Batcave. Later on, after his father's death, Terry happens upon evidence that gives him a reason to pursue Bruce's help as Batman. So by my count, that's about 10 cases of happenstance. That's at least 10 really big coincidences that led to Terry becoming Batman's protege. In fact, that's not even the whole story. A bunch of other stuff had to happen after that before, like, Terry was even really allowed to officially be Batman's protege. In Epilogue, I'm supposed to believe that Terry is a clone of Bruce Wayne. Like, people talk about this like they're excited. Like, hey, did you hear that Terry is actually, like, Bruce Wayne's clone? Isn't that cool? No, it's stupid! Sorry, no, I'll let you form your own opinions about that. Let's talk about this. Terry is somehow created when Amanda Waller messed with Warren McGinnis's genetic material. Waller never actually ends up making Terry into a vigilante, so I'm supposed to believe that after all this work that she did, the clone of Bruce Wayne, who was really more like a half-brother or a son, he became Batman by accident. Like, I know guys who watched the show religiously, like they saw every episode and they hated every episode. Like, old school fans, I think, felt threatened by Bruce's mortality. Maybe it made them feel old, that their childhood hero was old, I don't know. But they hated on that really gorgeous, overall pretty well written show just because they didn't think Terry was a good Batman. We could have stopped watching it. But it's weird how all these fanboys who typically say anything with Batman in the title is amazing, they automatically hated Batman Beyond before they'd seen much of it and just continued hating on it for every reason they could possibly think of. Instead of recognizing this for the immaturity that it was, we had to write Epilogue and win over the people who hated the show, alienating all the people who loved the show. Batman fans have always argued that the thing that makes Batman cool is that he's human. He doesn't have powers, he's not immortal, he's a person like you and me who can fail and screw up and get old. And yet he's accomplished these beautiful things. Batman, Bruce, is 100% human. So why are all these hardcore fans so mad that Batman Beyond has an old Bruce in it? They're so mad about that. Or they were, until Epilogue, which just makes me even angrier. The show made it very clear that, like, Terry doesn't know what he's doing, and he's so afraid that he's not gonna live up to expectations at all. Like, he's under all this pressure from all these different people, and Bruce is the harshest, most unforgiving person in his life. That's the person he wants to please the most. Like, it's the whole point of the show. He isn't very educated, he's not much of a detective, but the show also demonstrated that Terry has potential, he has passion, and he cares, and that's what moved Bruce to give him a chance, because you could see Terry cares about people and doesn't want anyone to suffer the way he's suffered. That's why Bruce became Batman.
By the way, thanks.
For what?
For reminding me why I got into this. It's been so many years now.
But you never really forget, do you?
No, you don't.
I mean, I think the whole reason Lost Soul was written was because Rebirth Part 2 failed to establish, like, aside from that amazing suit, Terry does have a lot of potential to be a good Batman. Terry's adaptable. It's established he's good at math.
15 times 15.
225.
Like, he's not a total loser. He views himself as a total loser.
I was a pretty bad kid once. Ran with a rough crowd, broke a lot of laws to say nothing in my folks' hearts. The kind of punk you wouldn't have wasted a second punch on back in the day.
Your point?
I'm trying to make up for past sins.
That's the whole tension of the show, and that's why I love it. I didn't watch it for the dumb romance, more on that later. The dynamic between Bruce and Terry, it's still my favorite. Bring back Bruce and Terry. I should probably take a moment to talk about the things I like about Epilogue. I like how the scenes flow into flashbacks. It was probably really difficult to write, and it was pretty creative, and the black and white thing, while it didn't really have any rhyme or reason, it was a pretty aesthetic, and I liked it. I liked that little girl Ace. I like Bruce's awkward attempt at making up with Terry.
I made you some soup, but it's cold.
I like Dwayne McDuffie. I like Aquagirl's new powers. And of course,
I don't want any tea!
in the future, Terry's random physiology is going all Brucey, and it looks just disturbing. He's got a terrible mullet. He's got... Was that like a Nightwing thing? Why did we do that? His face looks weird, and he quits the JLU for no reason. They're like, oh, the Batman, we love you. He's like, well, I quit. I'm never gonna be in the Justice League again. Go quit the Justice League. And he's like, what? He's like, I'm not mad at you, but I'm mad. So goodbye forever. He's like 30, but he's way more cranky and emotional than he was in high school.
How could you do it to me, Bruce? Tell me something I don't know. Don't you get it? Every single one of them left you. Ever wonder why? I'm poisoned, Dana. Cursed. Batman is dead. Turns out they were just another lie. Another in the long list of things you've stolen from me. My point is, I just found out that Warren McGinnis isn't my father. You set the whole thing up. You are insane. Being Batman's no honor. It's a curse.
So Terry thinks that Bruce might be his father, probably because he was looking in a mirror, but also I guess because they're a close genetic match and the odds are low for that. Here's a question. If you weren't sure who your father was, who's the first person you'd ask? Mrs. Judson? I mean Mary McGinnis? Yeah, probably Mary McGinnis, right? And finally he breaks up with Dana instead of her breaking up with him. But it just really did not feel believable that Terry and Dana would date on and off again for 15 years. Like, guys, you gotta call it quits if you're doing the on again, off again thing that long. It's just a sign to walk away. But for 15 years they did that, and then I'm supposed to be happy that they're getting engaged? Ugh. The thing about Dana Tan is we expect her to be with Terry because she's obligatorily inserted into the show as, and this is the girlfriend who doesn't understand. Like, that's a common superhero trope. It's actually based on a story older than superheroes called The Scarlet Pimpernel. Like, that's a really lame title, but read it sometime. It's great, and it explains so many superhero tropes, except it does them better than a lot of superhero stories have done in imitating it after the fact. There's a lot of great tension in the idea that they love each other, they don't know that they can trust each other, and they don't know that they can work together. That's really, like, Scarlet Pimpernel is a really sexy book. But, the thing with Dana is, from episode to episode, she was whatever the writers needed her to be. Sometimes she was really sweet and understanding. Sometimes she was completely insane. So you hear people describe her as, like, a really nice character, or a really strong character. I think of her as a crazy person. And really it's not that she's characterized as a crazy person, it's that she has such different personality traits every time you see her, because the writers didn't really have her very well developed, and she was really just there for cheap tension. Even though originally I was like, yeah, Dana's the best because she's the nice girl, I really don't ship Terry and Dana. I actually don't think that every story needs a romance. If you're gonna force a romance, you could force it with anyone but Dana and it would go better. Like, you know, they're the big three. You've got Dana Tan, who's popular in mainstream, I guess. You've got Melanie Walker, who I originally hated and now she's my favorite. And you've got Max, who is also a very, very popular ship. Now, it's unlikely that Terry would marry any of those people 15 years after he originally dated them. But if you were gonna force that story, would you marry the person with completely erratic personality traits? The person who's proved untrustworthy more than once? Or your best friend? Speaking as someone who doesn't ship Max and Terry, it's simply because I don't see a lot of evidence that they feel romantic toward each other. It still makes a lot more sense for Terry to marry Max. She's not even mentioned. Like, where is she? Where did she go? What's she doing? Has she still not seen the Batcave? Poor Max. So Terry leaves with the bat suit, but he breaks into the mansion wearing his civvies. Harder and noisier and more dangerous and completely unnecessary, but that's how he chose to do it.
I've been wondering when you were going to show up.
So Amanda Waller made a kid named Ace. Yet another character named Ace in the Batman universe, because we didn't have enough of those. And she made another Royal Flush Gang, because we didn't have enough of those either.
I've met her before. She has the power to give anyone she's in contact with hallucinations, as you can see.
It's worse than you think. Ace's powers have evolved. She doesn't create hallucinations anymore. She telekinetically warps reality. Cadmus Psytecs predict that Ace is days, maybe only hours from a massive aneurysm. When she goes, the psychic backlash could kill everyone in range of her power.
This is definitely the best part of Epilogue, and the only reason to bother watching it is Batman's moment with this girl.
You were going to try and talk me into fixing what I've changed. Before I die.
Yes.
I'm dying very soon.
Yes. I'm sorry.
Could you stay with me? I'm scared.
And that's how Waller decided she needed Batman for always, in the weirdest way. Waller explains Terry's origins in detail, excruciating, weird, awkward detail.
I used my old Cadmus connections to gather the technology necessary for Project Batman Beyond. Bruce's DNA was easy enough to obtain. Then I found a young Neo-Gotham couple with psychological profiles nearly identical to those of Bruce's parents. Your father thought he was getting a flu shot. Actually, it was a nanotech solution programmed to rewrite his reproductive material into an exact copy of Bruce Wayne's. A little over a year later, your mother gave birth to you. But unknown to you, a mysterious figure hides in the shadows. My plan was simple. The killer would leap out at you and kill your family. The trauma would put you on the path to becoming Batman. One problem. My assassin wouldn't pull the trigger.
It's just fan service. That's just fan service. Why was that in there? Where did Phantasm go? Why did she come back? Why did she come back as a hired gun working for Amanda Waller? What? Amanda Waller reaches out to her and says, like, hey, I'm making a clone of Batman. Would you mind murdering his parents for me? And Phantasm goes, oh, yeah, sure, I guess I can do that. I'll pull out the old costume there. It's like, and then, she chickens out because, Phantasm has never been someone who orphans people because Amanda Waller asks her to. So yeah, that makes sense, but nothing before that makes sense at all.
You know the Lord's been a great comfort to me all these years. Yeah. I've got a lot to answer for when I meet him, but I'd like to believe that for all the harm I've caused, I've also done some good.
That's not Christianity.
Like the good book says, he moves in mysterious ways.
That's not a Bible verse.
You're not Bruce's clone. You're his son. There are similarities, mind you, but more than a few differences, too. You don't quite have his magnificent brain, for instance.
Uh-oh. Okay, let's pretend that Epilogue pulled off all these coincidences believably, which it didn't. You just didn't notice because the story is buried in flashbacks. That raises new questions. Could Warren McGinnis ever have his own child? Did he ever go on to have his own children? Because Matt looks a lot like Terry. Is Matt also Bruce's son? I guess we have no time to talk about that. Is the boys' DNA the reason Warren and Mary got divorced? This is why this breaks Batman Beyond. It makes the premise completely convoluted. Let's say Amanda Waller is right and the world must always have a Batman. Sure, but Bruce Wayne's DNA has very little to do with that. Yeah, he's got a nice build, probably helped a lot, but most of it was training. Like, you can't bring back those dead senseis. You can't bring back Zatara. He's probably not around anymore. You can't bring back Alfred Pennyworth. Man, what adult who's worked for Cadmus, who's worked with Lex Luthor, like, What adult woman thinks to herself, I'll just hijack this random dude's sperm and I'm gonna tell him that he needs to get a shot, and the shot is gonna, like, actually replace his sperm somehow with Batman's sperm that I got from some of Batman's blood that he left on the roof, and, like, I'm gonna use that to make sperm, and I'm gonna replace this guy's sperm with Batman's sperm, and then he's gonna have a baby, and it's probably gonna be a boy baby. We're gonna wait a couple years, he's gonna have a happy life as a middle-class kid whose dad is like an accountant or something.
My dad was a scientist.
And I don't know what his mom does, but she works too, and then Phantasm's gonna murder him, and that'll turn him into Batman. She could have just done what they did when they made Superboy. She could have supplemented some DNA and grown someone in a tube and given him memories that make him think he's Batman, and then, like, hop to it, you work for me.
Maybe you dug up some of that old Cadmus nanotech. Used it to have my genes rewritten to match yours.
That technology's been illegal for over 40 years.
Didn't stop the Joker from using it on Tim Drake.
But she doesn't do that. Here's what would have happened if I had been forced to write this story. Amanda Waller figures out who Bruce Wayne's protege is. It's not hard. It's been established, like, if you can put cheetah DNA into a person and make them like half of a cheetah, you can definitely just, like, make them half of Bruce Wayne. You could probably make them more than half of Bruce Wayne if you wanted to. She gets a hold of some splicing science, and she puts a little thing and a little thing, and somehow she gives Terry a shot, and he changes so that he has Bruce Wayne's DNA. Terry figures out what's happening. At first he thinks Bruce is doing it. Bruce has no idea what's going on. He gets to the bottom of it, dumb conversation, tea, and then he says, well, you know what? I already feel like Bruce is my surrogate dad. I don't need to be related to him for him to be my surrogate dad. And then he says, you know what else? I'm doing this because someone killed my original dad, killed Warren McGinnis. And I still love that guy. Out of respect for him, I'd like my old DNA back, please. And he reverses the splicing and goes back to being regular Terry, just not an emo Frankenstein. The end. By trying to make the show deeper, they made it more shallow. It kills the rivalry and tension between Bruce and Terry. Instead of unlikely family coming together, which is what makes the Bat family in general great, now it's, these people are technically genetically related, and so of course, this person must follow in this other person's footsteps. Now in our minds, Terry somehow has more of a right to be there than he did before, because they're related. Bruce Wayne legally adopted Dick Grayson, so Dick Grayson is also Bruce's son. You don't say he's his adopted son. He is his son. He may not be his biological son, but he's his son. We don't need to invalidate that by bringing in people who are his genetic sons. Like, that makes it more legitimate. Lots of people really shouldn't be with their biological parents. Lots of people have great adopted parents. That's not an illegitimate family. It kills Terry's reason for becoming Batman. Both of his parents are alive. Apparently Warren McGinnis was nothing to him, and he didn't even get along with him that well anyway.
All those warm feelings I had for my dad, turns out they were just another lie.
It's like he doesn't even care about Warren. It's like we don't even care about Warren. And I don't think that's fair. Like, Warren McGinnis seems like a pretty decent guy. Why would you do that to that character? Why did he deserve that? Why was any of this necessary? The story didn't need to be told. When Batman Beyond ended, I mean, I didn't want it to end. A lot of people didn't. It was canceled because it wasn't selling toys. But when it ended, there were really no cliffhangers. Other than, like, what's Dick Grayson up to? Apparently he's alive. Can we hang out? Alright, full disclosure, Batman Beyond is just a stupid TV show that I love way, way too much. And Epilogue is a dumb episode of an even dumber show that no one was really working very hard on, although the animation is beautiful. But the real, like, disgusting thing about Epilogue is not so much Epilogue, it's what it reveals about us. Like, it reveals our prejudices about what a real family is. It means there are millions of people out there and we don't think they'll ever belong. There are millions of people out there that we don't think will ever be good enough, and a lot of them are kids, and we don't think they're good enough because they aren't related to anyone who loves them or who can love them the way they need to be loved. That's pretty sick. The reason this still makes me, like, really angry, it's not a fangirl reason. The reason this makes me angry is I feel pretty sure someday if I become a mother, it's gonna be through adoption. There's a weird prejudice against adopted and foster kids. People think to themselves, well, those kids aren't with their original families, so something must be wrong with them. Like it's their fault. Really? It's their fault that the adults in their lives failed them? It's their fault that they were honest about those failures? Like, you say that someone's adopted and you expect them to be crazy. Like, it's true, being adopted is hard. Sometimes it's really hard, and you don't always get adopted by the right people. You don't always get adopted by good people. So I'm not saying adoption is always magical. I'm saying whether or not it works has nothing to do with DNA. And people make comments. They make comments when you say that you're thinking about adopting, or when you suggest adoption, they go, how much did they cost? But you can never love them like your own. You're right. I can only love people who are biologically related to me. That's why I married my brother. Hey, baby. My kids are going to grow up being told that they're less because they were adopted. They're gonna identify as always being adopted. Not that it was something that happened once, but that it's something that they are forever. My kids are gonna be told, because the people who gave birth to you wouldn't or couldn't care for you, you have less of a right to be here than other people. People's acceptance of Epilogue, when they say little comments like, Terry has every right to be Batman because he's Bruce's son, really disturbs me. It ticks me off. Because everyone has a right to be here, and everyone has a right to be loved, and everyone has a right to do what they're good at, especially if it's helping people. And that's not a birthright or something that you get in your blood. I feel like we ought to know that by now in the 21st century. That's why Epilogue is the worst finale ever for the best show ever. I will not.